bottom level of the two-story club house, if you will, had parallel storage tracks that were serviced by a transfer table, which went to one finger of the steaming bay. So you could store your engines underneath the tracks, haul them out on the transfer table, run them over to the finger, the whisker off the steaming bay, and then get them out to wherever you wanted to go, and reverse the logic to put them away. Above them, coming up a grade, that was a pretty healthy grade. I don't remember what exactly it was, but it was big. We had, yeah, it was, I want to say it was at least a good 20% grade, if not more. But that was where we parked all of the club gons, and we also rented out track up there, because these were longer steaming bays. The bottom ones were pretty much only big enough for a locomotive and a riding car. But upstairs you could park the whole train in, because they went across the whole lower level. And then on the west side of the clubhouse were the bathrooms, and we had an indoor elevated track so that if you needed to do work on your train, you could back it in, and there was an elevated track section there, and we had a file cabinet and other miscellaneous things. And that was our clubhouse, but you couldn't hold a meeting there, barely had enough room to change your mind. But it was mainly designed for storage, and we would rent out storage space to people. But the good news was, I mean, this is where you had people from New Mexico coming in, and they were coming down from Nevada. I think we probably even had some Texas people coming over.
Some Golden Gate light shimmers came down.
Golden Gate.
LA light shimmers. What was the guy's name from Texas? Had that
Haas?
Harry, yeah.
Was it Harry
Well,
Haas?
no, it wasn't Harry, John got that consolidation. BSP consolidation.
I don't remember.
He used to come over here and run out.
Harry Bean?
Harry Bean.
Harry Bean.
Yes.
Scorcher.
Scorcher.
Scorcher, he loved to run. At any rate, we had a good track. It ran well. Steaming bays were there, air, water, everything. They would come in, and Saturday night was a steak fry, and that was where that tradition got going, because it was sort of a semi-culmination, because a lot of the out-of-towners may be getting ready to pack up on Sunday. So they were here on probably Thursday, Friday, and up through Saturday, and just running all over, having a good time. The club got a very good reputation as far as I know. I never heard anybody bad-mouthing the steamers back in those days. They enjoyed.
They go back home and have nothing but good to say about it.
And they enjoyed being over there, having a good time. And that's been one of the landmarks of the club, is that maybe with a few exceptions, as with any organization, for the most part, people are friendly. They're going to help you. You need help? What do you need? And we hear that even now over at Adobe. The people that interact with most of the other people are saying, we love coming here. You know, it's not just because of the size of the track at Adobe, but just because a lot of the people, they're friendly, what do you need? What do you want us to help you with? You know, that kind of thing. And it's been that way from way back when.
Life steamers are generally a great bunch of people. And friendly, and just they're good people. With a few exceptions, I'm not disappointed in anybody.
At any rate, we've gone back a ways to the early days. We incorporated in 82, in the fall of 82. I joined the month after incorporation, so technically I was not a corporate member at the time. Dick Weebolt and Bill Unglobby joined the month after I did. We'd have to go back into the minutes and find out who was formally approved way back when. And we evolved Scottsdale as far as we could take it. And that was what got Adobe going. To digress a little bit over to the Adobe scenario, the original track was laid around what is now the museum in Pottsville. The original name was not Pottsville. And the reason we started at the museum is because that's where the electrical outlet was. There wasn't anything else west, south, or otherwise except horse manure from the corrals. I mean, there was nothing anywhere else. So the track was initially laid around the museum because you had power there. You had one more important feature, a commode, which is why the town was originally called Pottyville. But then, as with a lot of western towns, that lacked a certain ambiance, so they changed it to Pottsville. And that was where we originally ran around. And I want to say, now think about this, people. At Pottsville right now, there are 2 stub sidings. And what is sticking in my mind is that those 2 stub sidings were the original passing siding tracks when we first laid track at Scottsdale, or at Pottsville. I want to say that's where those 2 tracks are original.
I can't answer that, I don't know.
Okay, because we had real tight radius. It was like 30 foot or 50 foot or whatever craziness it was on the north end, and it was a little bit wider on the south end.
It was the other way around.
The south end was wider, I thought. North end was wider? Gosh. Any rate, it obviously had limitations on what kind of power you could run there. If you could run a diesel there with no problems, you could run an 040, maybe even like an 060. You start getting Kean's Hudson, you can kiss that thing off. It's going to straighten the rail out going around the curve. But that's why Pottsville got started where it did and where the steamers got started there, because it was the only place we could do things. And Ray Massey, from where the name Massey comes from on the siding, one of his big things as a retiree was he would put track panels together. And let's go back to Scottsdale. We had no track on the ground. And the only track we had was the stuff that you guys got from Gila Bend. So eventually we would get enough money to where we could afford to buy some rail. Well, then where do you get the wood from? And we had an interesting thing going. And I've got to throw 2 names in. One you've already heard, and that's Russ Kean. He's the one that had the Hudson that Bill Pardee now owns. The other name was never a member of the club. His name was William Mitch Mitchell. And he had a 14 1/8 gauge train, true quarter size. Now, the actual engine was a Hudson, but I think it was a Wagner 1/5 scale. I don't think it was a full quarter scale.
Yes.
Any rate,
It was 14 1/18 gauge.
but it was 14 1/8 gauge, quarter scale gauge. Mitchell had a loop of track in a cove of land in North Phoenix. Turned out to be about a mile from my house, so naturally I could find ways to spend some time out there with him. But
I think that's where you and I got together.
that's where I first met your other half a long time ago. That's where I first met Dick Weeble. And his wife Gwen was with him, and Gwen was pregnant with her youngest child at the time. But what was happening, we had a nice little rotation going. Dick had the back of a pickup converted into a trailer. So I think Dick picked me up, I don't remember, we lived close enough together or how we got together. We would go to Ray Fabrication, where they would make trusses, which means they had scrap lumber. And we worked out a deal with them where they would let us go into their scrap pile. And we would pick up pieces of wood, 2x4s, that we knew were going to be big enough to use for ties. So we would load up Dick's trailer with as much scrap lumber as we could scrounge at the time, because we were both still working. So we were doing this outside of our job situations. And then we would take that trailer full of lumber over to Russ Kean's house, which is around northern and whatever, central corridor. We would offload all of the lumber at Russ's place. Russ had a table saw. he would cut all the 2x4s to length, throw away the scraps, and then rip the 2x4s in half. Because that's how the original ties were, is effectively 2x2s. I had a Corvair van back then. I would go over to Russ's place, because he was about 5 miles south of me. Russ would have them already in boxes. I would load the boxes into the back of my Corvair van. I would drive up to Mitchell's place about a mile north of me. Mitchell had the creosote tank. It was a 55-gallon drum full of creosote oil.
He wouldn't take a dime for it.
And he never took money for the oil. And he would stuff in all of those 2x4s, put a weight on them, and cap the sucker and let them cook. When he got done and let me know they were ready, he had taken them and put them back in boxes. I took the creosote treated ties back to Russ's place to pick up another set of cut ties ready for treating. Russ would then take the treated ties, and he had 2 jigs, one for curve track and one for straight track. And we had the rail over at his place, so Russ would then fabricate all of the track panels, which were then loaded up on a trailer and transported out to Scottsdale to be laid. And the only kink that happened in this whole little routine is that when they got to Scottsdale, the guys would take the curve track and put it in the straight, and take the straight track and put it on the curve. So it didn't do a whole lot of good to pre-curve the track. Any rate, we had that little rotation going, and for the longest time, this has popped into my mind, it was probably when Dick Weevil was president. We were always scrounging around trying to find a place where we could meet. Go to Roger's place, go to Bob Manette's place, go to wherever we could go.
By that time, we were getting pretty big. It was pretty crowded.
Yeah, it was getting interesting. And Dick Weevil, at the time, happened to be an employee of a thing called Valley National Bank. And they happened to have a facility off the freeway, about Bethany Homes, Camelback, somewhere down in there. Any rate, Dick had made arrangements with the bank for us to go into one of their meeting rooms or conference rooms. So when we had our monthly meetings, that's where we ended up going for a good number of years, was down to the bank.
In the meantime, I was named the boiler inspector over there. Because I was really one of the only people that knew anything about steam. So at that first meeting at the bank you and I you were talking about, Fritz Kuster was there. And as he said, Fritz had this Little Engines American. One day I get a call from Guy again. And he says, Roger, he said, do you know where there's a steam engine making up in the park? He says, we've got the passenger car there. And he says, I think steam locomotive would be great, but we can't find anything. Do you know of any? I said, I might. So Babe and I drove down to Superior. We went over to Magna Arizona Railroad. And one time they had 3 steam engines. And 2 of them they had sold. They still had the number 6 down there. And they had torn it apart to rebuild it. And they rebuilt all the mechanical end of it. When they went to retube the boiler, they decided it was too small for what they wanted, so they just put it back together the way it was. And so I knew all about that. So I went into the offices and I introduced myself, told them I was from Phoenix, the Scottsdale area. They have a park. They would love to have a steam locomotive on display in the park. And I wanted to know if your locomotive would be available. He said, we would consider it. Well, I said, okay, so I got their phone number and I gave them Guy's phone number, came back, called Guy and told him all about that. And they finally called him and said, you can have the engine. So that's how we got the engine out there.
Wow, must have been a project having it hauled over. And the club had to come up with the money to do
Well,
that.
they really had no place to put it at the in Superior at the mine. They had it sitting on a spur track back there. They didn't want people walking around back there to look at it. So it kind of served a good purpose, gave them a reason to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And knew it was going to will be well taken care of.
Yeah,
Which
perfect.
it has been
perfect.
very well taken care of.
Absolutely.
And that engine mechanically is like brand new. So it's, which is kind of sad because it'll never run again. The other two are running,
Yeah,
but it's still, I got a good home.
yeah. A lot of people get to see it and appreciate it.
And when Haim finally decided to take his engine back to Colorado, he called me and said, Roger, he says, I want the engine taken back to Colorado. You know anybody to do it for me? I said, well, of course I do.
September 75.
He said, I kind of figured you would. I said, but we're going to make a change this time. He said, what is that?
October 75.
I said, we're going to do a flatbed and
75, 76.
truck and flatbed, 18-wheeler. Oh, can you have one of those? I said, of course I can. He said, okay, so we went down to Leaseway company, leased a tractor and trailer, and I made it a lot easier to go back up there with having it sticking out the back of the truck. But we were driving along near Dallas, New Mexico. Dave went with me on that. And we were driving along, and it was right near Christmas. There were still a lot of Christmas lights up and people talking about it. And a guy passed me. And he says, oh my God, what you got back there? I told him, he said, hey guys, that's what we need to see from now on. Trucks hauling trains and these damn trains hauling trucks. Then we got up as far as Santa Fe, and the track from Santa Fe to Raton on the highway was the roughest highway I've ever been on in my life. It was up and down, falling down, bouncing up. It was literally bouncing Dave's head off the roof of the tractor. And I had a nice upright seat on my side.
Not the passenger.
Hers just had some white springs in it, and that was it. She says, man, he says, I hope you get up this road pretty quick. She says, my butt is killing me. I said, I don't know why you're complaining. I says, after all, I says, you've got a nice spring seat in there. And it didn't go over real well either.
You had a nice seat.
And it was, we had some good experiences.
Going back to some of the earlier newsletters, John has pointed out, the Gandy Dancer was the original name to the club newsletter. And it stayed that way through 1975.
And drawing, it was a
And then in
cover on it.
1976, it got changed to Stack Talk.
That cover, it was like you have it in there something. Towards the front. Yeah, that. A friend of mine drew that for us.
Oh, okay.
And,
So that logo's 40 years old.
it was.
Just a couple of excerpts from what we were just talking about. September meeting was held at Kuster's home. Enjoyable time had by all. Fritz, by the way, this is the date timestamp. Fritz, by the way, is looking for some Saturday volunteers to help finish up the track around his house.
Mm-hmm.
And this was back in the, whatever I just said, time frame, 71 time frame.
No later than 71.
Yeah, so it was 71 when Fritz was putting the track around his place. The next paragraph, it talks about Bob's 1.5 American well along and should be a real looker. That's an understatement to that engine. And then the back end of the thing was, we talked about the Tempe Recreation and Parks Board when we were negotiating with them for land. And then it was said, it was noted that Mr. Mitchell donated to the club some 1,500 ties
They
for
were
an
not
1.5
taking
track.
time for 'em.
And that's about 400 linear feet of track. And like I said, we had a little routine going where Dick and I would get the wood, take it to Russ would cut it, I'd haul it to Mitch, take the creator back to Russ would fabricate the panels would go to Scottsdale. And we just had this little routine going. And the other thing that's interesting, we were going to places like Rayfab and raiding their scrap pile. And I don't remember the exact sequence of who said what to whom, but we contacted Shuck Lumber and explained what we were doing and what we needed. And what Shuck Lumber then allowed us to do, they had 24-inch cribbing 2x4s that were already stacked. And they let us take as much as we could haul on the flipping truck. And usually I was the one that was doing it, because I think Dick was, at that time, may have moved back to Ohio or something. So I had a little Nissan pickup, and they loaded that thing up to where the springs were just about where they needed to be, and that was the way things were going. I mean, that's how the early days of getting the track panels built and set up were all done. It's just people doing things like that. Just
And it essentially still is.
yeah.
We used to go out to Mitchell quite a lot, and he'd take the train out and run it around once maybe, and he'd say, you get in there and run. So I would, and any of the guys from the club would come over. They'd set up in the cab with me, and some of them I'd let run it, and they all had a lot of fun riding on a steam engine. And I was good old days.
Yeah. I'm
And,
glad we have the new insurance now that allows everybody to bring their own equipment back into public runs.
It talks about he and Ellis joining in 1971. And all of these have some guy named Roger Nett's address on them.
I saved a bunch of them. I think that's where a lot of those might have come from.
But it got, the club has come a long way. The first engine we ever got as a club was a little 060 diesel. And if you want to get a feel for what that engine is and was, go look at the little blue engine who did we sell it to?
No, Little Blue we still have.
Is it still there?
Yeah.
It's a little 060 switch engine.
I haven't seen that thing run for a long time.
I thought we turned it over to somebody to maintain or something.
Well, Fran and his boys were taking care of it,
Okay,
but they don't have a lot of time to come out. The boys are getting older now.
Fran Neuer and his sons were kind of taking care of it. It was just a little diesel-like
pulled a
looking.
couple of cars around.
It was like a Plymouth 060 switch engine.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand, again, going back to the days in Scottsdale, the first passenger cars that we had were 8 foot long. And the reason they were 8 foot long is that's because how long the sheet of plywood is. And the sides and everything were cut out of the sheets of plywood and fabricated into gondolas. And I think we had 8, 10, I think we had maybe 10 of them. We put a metal aluminum guardrail on the top to keep the end from splintering and ripping people up. But those were our first cars that we had that were club cars. There is still 1 or 2 of them floating around Adobe.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember where all they are. They're in maintenance way service at this point, but there isn't too many of them left. Most of them have disappeared, but there's still a few of them left. Those cars are an interesting aspect of our insurance. This is way back when I was Secretary Treasurer, and therefore it was my job to interact with the insurance company. So I'm talking, and I think we may have had to switch at this time. So I'm explaining to this representative who we are, what we're doing, what kind of insurance we need, and so on, because we've got to have for the city of Scottsdale. And I explained to her who we are and what we do, and the property and casualty insurance business had no flippant idea what to do with us. We weren't a kiddie ride. We weren't a private operation. We were in a city park. They had no clue how to charge us for anything because we didn't fit in nice pigeonholes that they had created. And so we were talking, and I explained to her that on most Sundays we would run with 4 cars. And if the demand got high, we would add a 5th car into it. So what she did was figure so many dollars per car times 5 cars, and that's how her insurance rates got figured. It was just based on kiddie ride logic of, oh, it's like having 5 cars on a little merry-go-round thing or something. So that was what it was. And what people don't understand, the grade at Scottsdale going to the top of the tunnel, I want to say it was 2%. It's a 2% grade. Now we've got this little blue engine out at the park. It was multicolored brown back then. It was called Savaki. Don't ask me what it meant. Probably wasn't polite. Any rate, we would couple on to the riding cars. And we didn't have a caboose back then necessarily, so we had a makeshift conductor's seat that was stuck onto the rear seat of the last car, and that's where the conductor sat to monitor the train. And those seats are still in the car barn, by the way. You'll see 1 or 2 in a minute. That little 060, starting off on a level surface at the station, going for 100 feet, 150 feet, didn't go very far till it hit the grade. And as long as you got a run and got up to speed, that little 060 would take that 2% grade with 5 loaded riding cars. Now, if you stopped on the way up, it's called know how to go in reverse, because you got to get back down and do a run and get that everybody got out and push the sucker, because you know, ask Roger about what his dad had to go through coming out of Prescott with helper engines out of the grade there. So that was where that got going, and then we laid the dual gauge track inside of that to go for 7.5, 4 3/4. And they actually still use that over there now, but not for the way we originally intended. That's how they get into their servicing area. I won't talk about Scottsdale. They had to kludge what they could get away with. What can I say? So we had a good meets. We had people coming in. The spring meet, when we decided our meets, and they had the Scottsdale meets have a direct bearing on the Adobe meets, because I want to say we scheduled the spring meet as the 4th Saturday, 4th weekend in March. So it was the 4th weekend. So when we moved to Adobe, we didn't want to conflict with Scottsdale. We were trying to be nice people and all of that. So he said, okay, we'll just move it up a week. Moving it back a week was borderline suicidal, because now you're pushing right into Easter all the time, where if you went back, you were avoiding Easter, and that's why the spring meet is the 3rd weekend in March. Scottsdale had rail fair, and rail fair was the 2nd weekend in October. So we were naturally considered to be an attraction, and therefore our fall meet became the 2nd weekend in October. And when we moved to Adobe, again, we didn't want to conflict with them, and we couldn't move it up one, because up one was LA. They were on the 1st weekend in October, and Riverside was the 4th. So we went to the 3rd. And that's why we ended up in the 3rd weekend forever and a day, until just recently when we decided it was still getting warm in October, and so we wanted to back it off a little bit more. But that's where our two meets, spring and fall invitational meets, were directly tied to the Scottsdale meets, which were fourth weekend in March and second weekend in October. That's how we tried to work with the two clubs. And we had a good time doing on that. What else can you remember?